Hi everyone, Anthony Morganti here. In today's video, I'm going to teach you how to use Photoshop to get a unique architectural look. We're going to have an image that starts out looking like this and end up with an image that looks like this. Okay, the first thing you need to do is open up an image into Photoshop. So we're going to click on Open, and on my desktop I have a Fujifilm RAW file. We'll open that up. When you open up a RAW file into Photoshop, it will actually open up into Adobe Camera Raw first. And you can see on the right-hand side, I didn't do any adjustments at all to this image. But it is underexposed because I knew when I was taking this shot that I was going to be creating a low-key image in post. So I purposely underexposed it in camera. You don't have to do that. If you have a properly exposed image, when you're at this step and the image is opened up into Adobe Camera Raw, just take exposure down a stop or two. Don't worry about getting it exactly right because we're going to be readjusting tone later. So just underexpose it a little bit at this point, and when you do that, in my case I don't have to do anything, just click on Open. And when you do, you'll be opened up into Photoshop. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to work on the buildings independently of the sky. So we need to get a selection of one or the other. Select whatever is easiest to select. In this case, the sky is easiest to select. Now, there is a new tool in Photoshop, relatively new. If you go up to Select, you can select the sky that way. And it usually will do a pretty good job. It messed up a little bit over here on the building. But with that said, I strongly recommend that you do not use this tool because when it selects a sky, it will actually feather the edge a little bit. And we don't want a feathered edge on our selection. We want a real tight, sharp selection. So we're going to have to use another method to select the sky. So I'm going to get rid of these marching ants by hitting Command D on my keyboard on my Mac. It's Control D on a PC to deselect. Now what we're going to do is we're going to get the quick selection tool. Hit the W key on your keyboard and you'll get one of these three selection tools, either Object, Quick, or Magic. You want Quick. And then what you'll do is just select the sky, or if the buildings are easier to select, select those. So the sky's easiest to select here. So I'm going to select the sky, just draw on it, and you can see I'm getting a nice tight sharp selection of the sky. I don't even have to refine the edge. It did a nice job selecting the sky. Now, with that said, I don't want to work on the sky first. I want to work on the buildings first. So I'm going to invert the selection by hitting Shift-Command-I on my Mac, Shift-Control-I on a PC. Now I have the building selected. I'm going to put those buildings on their own layer by hitting Command-J on my Mac. It's Control-J on a PC. I'll turn off the background layer, and you can see that we now have the buildings all by themselves. Now what we need to do is turn this layer into a smart object. The reason why we're going to do that is we're going to be using the Camera Raw filter. And if I use the Camera Raw filter right now, any adjustments I do to this layer will get baked into that layer and I won't be able to readjust anything. And I may find that I need to readjust something. So I'm going to make this a smart object. To do that, go up to Filter and then just click on Convert for Smart Filters. You can see there's a little square in there, corner of the postage stamp of the layer. That means that's a smart object. So I'm good to go. We're going to go up to Filter now and we'll go to Camera Raw Filter. And you'll see it opens up that set of buildings all alone without the sky in Adobe Camera Raw. First thing we need to do here is make it black and white. So it's black and white. Now what I want to do is increase the contrast between the lighter gray of the windows and the darker gray of the building. So we could go with contrast too, but we're not going to do that. What we'll do is we'll go to whites, and we'll make the whites whiter by a lot, and the blacks blacker by a little. And that kind of did it. Now this technique, everything is really super sharp, so we're going to add a lot of texture, like over the top texture, over the top clarity, right? So that looks pretty good. Now again, because we made this layer a smart object, I could come back in and readjust this, but I think this looks pretty good. We'll click OK. So now we're back, and you can see there's our adjustments. Now, if you find you need to go back in and readjust anything, just double click on where it says Camera Raw filter, and when you do that, it will open up again into Camera Raw, and it will remember the adjustments you did, so you could come back in and readjust something. All right, now we're going to work on the sky, so we need another selection. We could go down to this background layer, turn it on, and then select the sky, but you know, an easier way is this layer up here is the buildings all by itself. Well, there's a little trick in Photoshop. If you hold the Command or Control key in and click on that layer, you'll get your selection back. And you can see I got my selection back, so that's a lot faster. We do need to invert it though, because we want to work on the sky by itself. So hold in Shift-Command-I on a Mac, Shift-Control-I on a PC again to invert it. But we're not going to, I mean, this layer just has blank pixels where the sky is. We need to go to the layer that has the sky on it. And then with that selection, hit Command or Control J to bring that layer all by itself. So now we have the sky all by itself on that layer. Now this is going to be a little tricky because when you bring layers into Camera Raw, it only brings the layer. It doesn't bring anything above it or below it. So we won't be able to see the buildings when we're doing our adjustment, even though we have them on. Now I am clicked on the layer with the sky. As a matter of fact, let's rename this top layer Buildings, and let's rename the sky layer Donkey. No, we'll rename it Sky. That's probably more descriptive of what it is than saying Donkey. All right, so it's Sky. So we have the sky selected and active. Now we're going to make that a smart object. We'll go up to Filter and Convert for Smart Filters, and then we're going to go up to Filter, and we're going to go down to Camera Raw Filter. Now, as I mentioned, this could be a little tricky, but it's all right. We're going to make it black and white. Maybe add some contrast. Maybe let's go down to like that, like that. Let's just bring exposure down just a little bit. Make the whites a little whiter, black's a little darker. Maybe bring exposure down just a touch more. So we kind of have to guess. But because we did make that layer a smart object, we could come back in and readjust it once we click OK. If we say, oh, you know, it's too light. Let's say I think it's maybe should be a little darker. I'll just double click on the words Camera Raw filter and then come in and bring exposure down a little more. All right, so click OK. All right, actually it looks pretty good at this point, but there is one humongous issue, right? There's haloing. See this matte, white matte going around? Now, the typical way probably to get rid of a matte is you would go up to Layer and then down to Matting, but you can see that's grayed out. That's grayed out because we created smart objects. Now, if you really want to use matting, it may or may not work, is you need to convert these smart object layers back into normal layers. To do that, you could right click and then go down to rasterize layer, but I'm not going to do that because that matting may or may not work. And then if I make this smart object layer a rasterize layer, all my adjustments I did with Camera Raw get baked in and I won't be able to go back in and readjust anything. So there's another thing we could do though. Now, first of all, we need to be aware that this white matte is being caused by both the buildings layer and the sky layer. They're both contributing to the white matte. So I'll probably have to do this little trick I'm going to show you to both of these layers. We'll start with the buildings. All right, so make sure you clicked on the buildings, go down to Effects, and go down to Outer Glow. Then what you need to do is click on this little swatch right here. And when you do, you get a color picker. And then what we're going to do is, because we have a color picker, we have an eyedropper. And we're going to click on the building right near where that matte is, that white matte is. And when we do that, you can see, wow, it reduced significantly, didn't it? All right, so we did that. We still have it there a tiny bit, though. That's because the sky is contributing to it as well. So we're going to go up to Effects, Outer Glow, and you can see it's pretty much gone. Now, if you want to, for this one, if you want to click here again and click, let's say, on the sky, you could do that and click OK. And there, it's pretty much gone. Now, we're done, kind of. Now, we could come back in and readjust anything we need to readjust because we do have these smart object layers, but I think we're okay. What I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to put a stamped or merged layer on top of everything. That means it's going to take all these layers, squash them all together, and put it on top. To do that, there's a crazy keyboard shortcut. On a PC, it's Shift-Alt-Control-E. On a Mac, it's Shift-Option-Command-E. When you do, you'll have this stamp layer on top. So that means I could turn everything off below it, and that layer is covering everything up, right? So now we could do some adjustments to this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get levels. The levels adjustment, a layer right here. And I'm going to take this far right slider and move it this way. Just kind of adding more contrast. And then I'll take this middle slider, kind of move that around, see what that does. And that I think is fine like that. And there we are. I think we're done. So this is before, and this is after. Before, after. Yeah, before, after. So that's how you get this kind of low-key, really over-the-top, fine art image look using Photoshop. Thank you, everyone who watches my videos. I really do appreciate it. I'll talk to you guys soon.